All right, good morning, everyone. We have here today Professor Jeff Adams, who taught economics at Beloit College for 38 years. And he played a very critical role in creating the Upton programs. So thank you, Jeff, for allowing me to interview you today. My first question for you is, how did the idea come about? Why did you choose the wealth and well-being of nations to be the theme for the Upton programs, or why Miller Upton's belief in the ideas of the liberal society? How did all those ideas come about?
Well, in 2004, one of our alumni, Bill Fitzgerald, who's a very important and helpful person for our department, asked the question, how can I help the department? And Bill is a very serious guy, and you needed a good answer. So I said, I'll get back to you on that. And really, after thinking about what could the department use at that point, we had kind of adequate staff and really very good faculty and a good student body. We needed something that would maybe make us a little bit more distinctive, which would allow us to more easily recruit students and in the long run recruit faculty. And so the idea of honoring Miller Upton, the sixth president of the college, had been incubating for some time. And there were a variety of ways of kind of thinking about that. One of them would have been a Miller Upton professorship. But we knew that Miller's great contribution to Beloit College as the president and as a scholar was his interest in ideas and the ideas of a liberal and free society. So we thought that it would be better to honor his name with a forum that would bring ideas to bear and ideas to the forefront.
Wow. So I'm really curious just to hear you tell stories about how that entire process of making it happen, creating the programs.
Well, once we had kind of a framework or a glimmer of an idea, and again, over time, the actual framework developed and changed its format. But once we knew that it was something to honor Miller, something that would talk about ideas, something about that came to be known as the wealth and well-being of nations, we could now begin to go out and talk to other alums. And the very first phone call after Fitzgerald was to Bob Virgil. Bob was a graduate of the college from 1956 and was a protege of Miller. Bob, at that point, was the dean of the Graduate School of Business at Washington University in St. Louis, which Miller was before he came to Beloit College to be president. And so we had Bill Fitzgerald, class of 86, Bob Virgil, class of 56, as two very important alums who were interested in helping to fund the ideas. We then talked to Miller to see if he thought this was a good idea. And because it wasn't honoring him directly with a named chair or something of that order, he gave his blessing. And once he gave his blessing, it allowed us to have a conversation with one of his great friends, Albert Neese. So I was able to talk to Eddie in his winter home in Scottsdale, Arizona, and talked about kind of the ideas that were incubating and if he would be willing to help to support the program. And he said that he was. And so we had three very important people supporting the ideas, including Miller, which we made four. And then the process of kind of shaping up the format so we could put it on paper became a lot easier because we knew that we were going to make this thing was going to be real. And along the way, of course, Emily Wright, who became the first Albert Nies professor, was instrumental in helping shape the ideas. So once we had the ideas on paper, we were able to kind of articulate what we had in mind. We were able to go to other alumni. Our development office was able to reach out to the estate of June Martin, who graduated in the 40s and had passed on, and was able to articulate to her lawyers that the Miller Upton Forum would be a great place for her to make her contribution. So when you introduce the Upton Scholar every year, it is as part of the June the June Martin lecture, if you remember doing that. And then we were able to write some very significant grants to the Bradley Foundation, who helped us in the first 3 years of the program to put on the program while all of the pledges were coming into the coffers.
Wow, thank you for sharing with us all this fascinating history. I've been directing the Upton programs, and I kind of knew a little bit, but now I'm getting a lot more details from you. So that's really great. Now, how about the program itself? Now, I am now the Nies Chair directing the Upton programs, and I love it. It actually is a large program with many subcomponents, but some, the critical components like the Upton Forum, the Economic Senior Seminar. So how did you and other people instrumental in creating the programs? How did you decide to make it that way?
Well, one of Miller's great ideas when he was president was a series of dialogues that he held with his dean. They're called the Upton Kolb dialogues. Miller was a classic liberal. Miller was a classic liberal in today's parlance. And they, in 1965, had a series of dialogues in which they sat on stage in front of the entire student body and discussed what they believed. And they had relatively different beliefs. And the idea was to have this dialogue. And I wanted to kind of read something from that statement, which gives you kind of an idea and a flavor for what that was all about. So if you'd bear with me, this is their presentations. We have the transcripts, they can be read. They're fascinating. And of course, in 1965, that was a very difficult period in our country's history, probably as contentious as we have today. So here's what they said. Dialogue is a more complete form of intellectual encounter than is debate. It's a form where there's an attempt on the part of contending parties to understand one another rather than to simply triumph. Rather, is an attempt to find the genuine points of conflict by clearing away the debris of pseudo-conflict and the emotionally combative elements of debate. It is an attempt to find the places where those who disagree may also stand together without sacrificing or papering over genuine differences. It requires the entertainment of the possibility that there may be something to be said on the other side, that one might even be required to alter one's own position to some extent by reasons of the truths to which the other party points. So kind of that was certainly the deeper underlying philosophy of trying to bring significant scholars to Beloit as part of a senior sem. Kind of the notion was that our seniors would be beyond kind of their adolescent certainties that they came with, their religious tribalisms, and might be ready to engage really difficult issues and begin to kind of develop this idea of being mature and modest about your views of how the world works. And so having these scholars come to debate, to have dialogues and conversations over really deeply important issues was part of that process. And again, having it as part of the senior sem was important because you could study their works before they appeared. So it wasn't just somebody famous helicoptering in or zooming in to be a person and to be observed. You kind of had a sense and a chance to spend 10 or 12 weeks studying their works kind of in context.
Wow. So so that was what they were debating or having dialogues back then in the 1960s. And I'm kind of glad you mentioned how that brings us to today. Do you have any comment to make about that philosophy, that belief by Miller Upton about productive dialogues in the context of today's divisive politics?
We certainly would like to have productive conversations, and it seems to me that we are lacking that considerably. So the Upton Forum, I think, does model that.
Yes, yeah. I think what I'm trying to kind of get at is the whole society need to model after this, after the Miller Upton program, productive conversations. So that, yeah. Okay. Well, I move on to my next question. So how does this impact students? What do you think? How do you think students benefit from these programs, especially in terms of preparing them for their future lives and careers?
Well, again, it strikes me that if you again do shed your adolescent certainties about the way the world is, and you have come to understand that the world is really uncertain, that answers aren't easy to come by, that you become a more useful employee. And of course, the underlying issues of the forum and the senior sem and our whole department, in some sense, is that business and markets are okay. And probably if you want to get a job in the private sector and having a sense that business and markets are okay is probably not a bad first way to start your interviews. And then, of course, within the Upton programs, we do have these endowed internships, and that certainly is helpful for students. And I think having internships as a component and something that the department can talk about is something that is useful to students.
Oh, that's great. Any final comments you'd like to add?
Well, again, I think one of the things that it's useful to tell prospective students and their parents is something about the way in which the program was put together in terms of these connections with alums. Bob Virgil, 56, Bill Fitzgerald, 86, other people in between, and that we have a tradition at Beloit College of our alums being very helpful, being connected, and that's certainly part of what we can offer to a current student is the ability to be connected to our alums of previous years. And we do that very formally through Econ Day and other programs, but we also do it informally because at the Upton Forum, there are alumni in the crowd who are very supportive. And I think that's a selling point, and it is something that can be very beneficial and is only really available at a small residential liberal arts college. It simply isn't available at a University of Wisconsin-Madison. There are just too many of them. To introduce yourself to an alum of UW as a UW alum is, well, that's nice, but there are hundreds of thousands of you. But to introduce yourself as a Beloit College alum, to a Beloit College student. That's a relatively smaller number of people, and I think they do take interest in you.
Wow, it has been wonderful interviewing you. Thank you very much.
Sure, glad to do it.